Your destiny. Your guiding planet rules your life. It is our privilege to present a celebrated scientist who will explain astrology in its true light. Professor S. Zoaraburikis.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm back, guys.
This is the
Let's start again.
astrological
Let me
science.
know
Well,
while it's starting through the cartoon whether it interrupts again. And hello if you're watching me for the
All
first
the
time.
rest
Take
I'm
care.
don't be sure except Chicago used to get the World's Fair. Ah, so this is Ares. Saggy trousers. Burbank's greatest masterpiece. Taurus. That's the bull that won't take moo for an answer. Round and round she goes. Where she stops, nobody cares. Ah, how do you like that? There sits King Taurus, the moon-kissed bull. When the moon shines, he is public boss #1. Bull meets crab. Crab meets good too on the blue plate lunch, 35 cents. Delicious. Oh, no more crab meat. All aboard. No moonshine? Taros is very unhappy. Saggy trousers gonna horse around a little bit. Take that. William Tell is gonna hit him right in the zodiac. Knocking the tar out of Taros. So long, sport.
Oh my goodness, poor Taurus. I paid attention to
Your
this
fate is
video
written in the
a
heavens.
lot more
You
than
cannot
the
escape
last
your
time when I had it on. Sorry if you're Taurus watching. Hello again, everybody. Hopefully this is going to stream much better. And those of you who are watching this on a repeat, this is take 2 of me going live. This is the thing about when you go live, things happen. But I think I've solved it. Fingers crossed. If not, I'm going to keep going and we'll just have to fix it at the end somehow. So I'm Bella. Most people know me as Bella's Secret Psychic. And if you're watching on Facebook, please say hey, hi and hello. And if you're watching on YouTube, also say hey, hi and hello if you're watching live as well. So today I'm going to give you Astrology 101. I'm going to be talking about basically how the planets and how energy of the planets and how that relates to astrology, how it affects us in our day-to-day life. So what I was saying before, things went a bit crazy with my technology, and I'm sure probably there is something going on today. There shouldn't be, because we had the full moon over the sort of 9th of the 10th, depending on where you was in the world. And we've also got Jupiter going direct, which is all about optimism. So I'm going to be optimistic as we go through this. But what I was saying is basically we're going to be looking at astrology and how astrology informs things like horoscopes, or informs things like our sun sign or our moon sign, and things like that. And so I'm going to be looking at astrology, looking at different types of astrology. I'm going to be looking at explaining to you sort of how charts are formed personally for people also as well, and how that relates to you, and how that helps you with challenges in your life, or sometimes people obviously use astrology to be predictive also in nature. So for those of you who do know me, I've talked about before how we are all energy, and if you don't know what I mean, you can watch some of my videos which are called Observation Matters, or when I talk about how to manifest, I talk about energy in those videos. But we're all made out of energy, and this astrology is about looking at what happens in a macro or sort of microcosm sort of viewpoints. So the micro being us in our human aspect, our human container, and the patterns and the cycles of the energy that we give off in the smaller sense, and then the astrological bigger sort of patterns and the energies that are displayed there, and our observations of that, and then how they correlate to us in the microcosm kind of sense of the world. So hopefully I'm not going to blow your heads off with this. I've tried to make it as simple as possible, being it is like an introduction to Astrology 101 to help people understand. But what I was also saying before I got cut off before, it's also how all readers that you see on YouTube, including myself, even though I don't use astrology like astrologers do, because I'm not an astrologer necessarily, how I work is I work with my spirit guides, but with my spirit guides and myself, I read energy. So a tarot reader, when they are doing tarot for your horoscope, they're reading the energy through the tarot. And again, with astrology, when they are doing a general horoscope of what's happening generally in the sky in a certain sign, it is looking at the energy of what is happening in the sky in a planet in order to make some sense, to give some insight, or perhaps to be predictive. That's pretty much, it all stems down to the same thing, basically energy. So I hope you get me. So people are back. Hi Jessica, hi Shell, hi Sharon, hi Dawn, hi Caroline, hope you're well. Hi Aurora. Sorry guys, it was take 2. And let's see if I've lost anybody on YouTube, because we have nodded. We've got Kirsty. Hi Kirsty, do hope you're well. Hi Janine. And she says, typical Leo fashion, I think the cartoon could use a little bit more lion. Yes, I agree. What I keep thinking is poor Taurus in that video. So again, as we go along, if you do have any questions, guys, I'll do my best to answer them for you. So let's carry on. So we're going to look at obviously what I've talked about. So what is astrology? Astrology is the study of the positions and the aspects of celestial bodies in the belief that they have a correlation with earthly occurrences and affairs. So when I talk here in this Astrology 101, I'm mainly going to be talking about natal astrology, which I'm going to explain what that is in a moment. But also when I talk about planets, I also, from an astrological and not astronomical point of view, planets will also include the moon and the sun and other astral bodies. So when I say planets, it can mean more than what we traditionally know as planets, in terms of when I'm speaking astrology, which is very different from the factual astronomical, what is actually up there, if you see what I mean, in order for you to understand how astrology works. Hi Susie, hope you're well. So I'm also going to talk about very briefly that there are actually different types of astrology. So when people think about astrology, they just think about it as one thing, but actually there are different types, and actually slightly bigger, and can be broken down even more than what I've shown you. But these are the main ones. So you have mundane astrology, you have electional astrology, you have honorary astrology, you have locational astrology, and you have natal astrology, which is primarily what I'm going to be focusing on in this 101. So what do they all mean? So you have mundane. Mundane is basically the study of places, basically, in places when they were formed. So if you think of a town or a city, or even you know, a new building, it is the study of a chart that tracks when and the influences of the energy of when that town or that city or that place or that building, like the Louvre, for example, was created. But also what's very interesting about mundane astrology is it can also look at the thought of creation about it as well, or perhaps when a treaty was signed that then had the influence of creating a town, or if there was an invasion or whatever it is through history. So we can track not just the start of that civilization or that place or that town or that building, but it could also track the idea of it, or the influences that pushed for something to also happen as well. And to look at the energies that took place at the time that made that brought to creation. So it's a bit like when I say in some of my other videos that when we've chosen to kind of come in our human existence, I've said before that actually we choose to also come in at certain astrological star configurations because of the energies and how they would influence us individually, but also because we do work collectively as people as well in our thoughts and how we push things politically, for example, we also will decide to come in sort of in a collective kind of way as well. So thank you for the compliments, guys, you're lovely. So the next type of astrology is electional astrology. So that's basically looking at the best time for successing things. So you, for example, may go to an astrologer, you may want to get your personal chart done, but you might want to have an electional one done because actually you're wanting to achieve something in particular. So you might be thinking, when is the best time for me to go for a job? When is the best time for me to get married? This is what an electional astrology focuses on. It will look at your chart and then we'll look at what's the predictive nature of your chart in terms of where the planets will be to give you the best insight of when you may be best fortunate for you personally for perhaps changing a job or becoming self-employed or for meeting a partner or for getting married or for having a baby. This is what electional astrology is for. Then you have honorary, which is a really interesting one, which is basically like today. If you said today, right now, that you wanted to ask the universe a question, basically in this moment now, if I said I want to know, when the next, where my keys are or something, or when I'm gonna have a next increase in money or whatever this is. If I've answered that question now, I can do a chart right now, or I might have the question now, but I might go to an astrologer and say, at this date, at this time, and in my location here in London, I ask this question. And so they'll look at the astrology through honorary astrology to actually give you the answer to your question. They will look at the energy and the planetary influences that will answer your question in relation to what you just answered. So people who practice astrology, they do it for other people, but a lot of them will also do their own questions and then will look at their own charts at the time they answer the question to get the answer. And actually it's what some astrologers do to find things as well. So if people have lost things, then where the configurations are in star signs and astrological bodies and your houses, which I'll come on to in a minute, will give you an indication also. So quite a fascinating one. Then you have locational, which is as it is, even though the natal does cover aspects of this, but it basically, again, will look at this. It actually splits off, I forgot to say, it splits off into two different types. So there's relocational astrology, like, for example, if you was to move, it will look at, but your move is based on, basically, maybe you want to move because you want to have a better career success. So, for example, I have clients sometimes who say, I would like to move from one area of New York, America, to another area of America. Is that going to be good for me in my career? Now, an astrologist may do a locational astrology in order to see whether that location would be in line with the energies in that specific location on Earth would be good for that person to go to. And again, as I explain more about natal astrology, you'll understand why location in your place has a lot of relevance to your own personal chart as well. And you've got astrocartology astrology, which again is basically the breakdown of different elements, which again, if you match them with relocational astrology, can best tell you where you'll find love, where you may become more spiritual, where you may, have the most success. It looks at many different things. And some people will move because of what is being described in their locational astrology. Depends on your belief in it. Astrology in general, just like tarot, just like any kind of reading, is to give you insight so that you can make choices or to set your intentions so that you can take actions. It's to give you the options. So let me just pause there for a moment so I can see if there's a hi Denise, do hope that you're well. Hi Heather. More natal all the way. I'm going to be talking about that in a moment. And Denise says, hello, I'm Bella, I'm Aries within the stairs for me. Within the stairs or the stars? And we've got Caroline says, I need an electoral chart done. It's good once you know. The thing is, the good thing about what I'm talking about is if you ever do want to get an astrology chart, you can now be more specific. You may go to your astrologer and say, I just want a natal chart done, which is what most astrologers do. They will do your natal, they will tell you what happened when you were born, and then they may give you one for this year. So quite often every year people then return to their astrologer and say, give me my chart for this year, so that I kind of see the trends. But you could be now more specific and say, actually, I want to know whether being in this location is good around my love life, or whether it's good around money. You can do it like that. You can be much more specific, and a good astrologer will be able to do those things for you as well. Good evening, Lisa. Do hope you're well. So let's continue. And then we've got the one that I'm going to be talking about more now, which is natal astrology, the most common astrology. And natal means birth, so your birth, and it tracks basically. It's what gives you your star sign, or your sun star sign. It tracks basically the time when you were born, the place, and your location, and the date, of course, of when you were born. And then your astrology chart, which I'm going to come along to, is formed from that basis and going onwards. So your chart obviously starts in one place, but every day or every year, as it continues, and what happens astrologically in the sky, that all shifts and changes as well. So sometimes when some of you will see my YouTube videos, I will reference to certain events that are happening astrologically, particularly if I feel that they are important to the energies that are happening, particularly in that sign, and how they may impact you. And they will impact you in certain different ways. They will impact you in the what something will do, and then in the how something will do, and sometimes in the where of where something will happen. So again, when we have Mercury retrogrades, which we have 3-4 times a year, that collectively, through our observation through astrological history and the correlation to it, usually brings up certain traits. So normally with a Mercury retrograde, electrical things don't tend to work so well, and things seem to reverse themselves. Sometimes people tend to split up, but it's normally temporarily in those kind of times. And also obviously messes massively also with communication. And how that came to was years and years ago, when astrology was first sort of formed, originally through kind of astrology, when they were doing it through navigating through waters and through ships, and then it sort of took another level. That actually they track things based on then what was happening again in the macro, in the wider patterns, so with Mercury, and then what was happening collectively here on Earth with individuals, and how that was all playing out. So that's how you get the different kind of aspects or qualities or sort of archetypes that come around each star sign or each planet or each house when it comes to an astrology chart. So are you with me still? Because I'm going to get a little bit deeper, guys. So have I lost you? Is it making sense? Do let me know. So let's just move on. So what is a chart? A chart is basically a map of the sky as we view it here in our human aspect from Earth. And it includes basically all the celestial bodies and their locations at the time, date and place of where you personally was born. Or again, like I said, where a building or whatever it was formed. And the Earth, which is where we live, basically, I think the best way to let me skip on, is the best way to kind of explain, as we all know, the Earth and all the other planets and moons all rotate around the sun. But from our perspective here on Earth, and particularly when astrology was first formed, we had a slightly different opinion. But technically, you can understand why people had a different opinion, because even today, as we stand on this Earth, from our observation, it looks like the planets, including the sun and the moon, I think, are rotating around us. So astrology is like that. It's called geocentric, basically, where basically the Earth is at the center of the universe, and all the planets which, like I said, I'm referencing the sun and the moon also as planets, all rotate around us. So we need to see astrology in that point of view and not in actually the realism of what it is. We have to see it from basically our perspective here on Earth and how it impacts us as individuals as we look at and up at the sky. So for example, we see our planets in our solar system and the moon and the sun, we see them as moving all around us. But when we see constellations or other stars and planets that are much more further away, they don't appear to move as much as the ones that are nearer to us. And so actually a technical term for our planetary system and the way that we see them moving around is called wandering planets, whereas the ones that are fixed are not called that, basically. But it's also why when you see sort of formations, so when you see constellations like in Sagittarius or in Cancer, they don't appear to ever change over a millennium, because actually those planets and stars are so far away that it will take millions of years for that constellation to actually change in shape and change form. Where it's very different for those that are nearer, that are moving around us. So I hope you get me. And like I said, astrology is our observation here on Earth as we look up, as planets rotating around us, and their correlation. So just like I've said before, it's about how we as humans have interpreted that based on what we observe, then what happens either within us or what we see around us, which has formed the general archetypes or energies that have been picked up when it comes to astrology. Hence why astrology is a science of sorts. Good, I'm glad you get me. Glad you can hear me. So basically, like I just said, so you know that saying, you've probably all heard it, as above so below. That's where this saying has come from. It's come from astrology. It's come from our observation of what happens in the patterns in that macro kind of way versus what happens in a microcosm way with us. It's like sometimes when I talk about tarot card, particularly when we're looking at sort of major arcana, you have 22 cards and they represent archetypes. Astrology is very much the same, hence why sometimes you have a lot of debate when it comes to astrology, and horoscopes in general, they just cover what happens in sun signs. Because people say, well, how can, you know, everybody be based on just one star sign? That's the archetype, but astrology in its true sense, when it's done personally for you, you'll find that it breaks down more, which is what I'm going to go on to describe to you. So we're going to talk about the signs. So we all know that there are 12 star signs, you know, Leo, Sagittarius, Pisces, Aquarius, all the 12 that most of you, but we all know. And if you don't, do have a look, because I've not listed them all here, but I will reference to some of them. And from our point on Earth, our planet is an orb, but if we were to look all around us, or to factor in the whole planet, and then how those planets from our observation rotate around us, they rotate in 360 degrees. So hence why a chart is always circle at 360 degrees as well. Now I might come off the screen just so that you can see some of the stuff I've got on here, but you will still be able to hear my voice. So there you can see here, you've got all the star signs that are all now around our Earth, around us, and they are all at 30-degree angles when you look at a chart, with Aries being the first point in a chart as well, which I'll talk more about in a moment as well. Now in the middle, which is Earth, and I forgot to say that the Earth is also referenced as the zodiac. So that's when you hear the term zodiac sign, it basically means Earth, Earth sign. But sometimes it's also referred to as a wheel of life, or sometimes it's referred to the wheel of animals, I think, I forget the term as well. But the zodiac, so you've got I hope I explained this, you've got the Earth in the middle, and then you've got all the planet signs around that then again rotate around us. And then you see that inner circle is the houses. And in those, the best thing I can show you here is you can see that I've put here, you've got all the star signs that you've got to imagine that those star signs rotate around us, and you need to think about it rotating around us in throughout the year. So we rotate around the sun, or things rotate around us throughout the year. But then you've also got planets that will sit in those star signs as well. So wherever a planet is, it may be sitting, for example, you've got Saturn at the moment sitting there in Aries at the moment. But then as that planet moves 360 degrees, I mean around, over a year, it will move into different star signs. So for example, we just had Jupiter go direct after being going reverse for retrograde, I should say, for a while. But we've also then got a lot of signs changing houses also within this month as well. And with that then will come some planets that will also shift into different houses too. And then all those energies and influences will change what is happening for us depending on our star sign or our moon sign, which again I'm going to get to. I'm getting deeper now, guys. So just for clarity, you have the Earth at the centre, which is the zodiac, the wheel of life. On the outside you have all the star signs that are rotating around us all the time. And then within that you have the planets that are also rotating. And those planets can be either in a star sign, but also in a house as well, which is the inner circle. And see it like this. You've got the planets, which represent the what. So for example, I'm a Sagittarius. And if I was born Sagittarius, which I am, on the cusp actually, a bit of Capricorn in me, but Saturn was also in my chart, but also the day and time I was born that I was in a certain house, I may have much more of an emphasis or trait that is slightly different from another Sagittarius because of having that planet also in my chart, as well as also what house I was born in. Now that shifts and changes, especially houses, that changes throughout the day sometimes as well. That can influence our thought forms, the way we go about things. It's basically one big rotation. And then our sign influences the how we do something. So the best way to give an example is like the sun represents identity. So that would be a what. And then so Sagittarius is about philosophy. I might be much more inclined as a Sagittarius to be much more focused on my own personal identity and philosophize about that more, or perhaps want to impact or shape or even choose a job. I may want to actually be a philosopher or a psychologist because it's all about personal identity, because that would be my trait in my birth sign for me as a person. And that's what separates why not every Sagittarius is like every other Sagittarius, or not why every Libra is like every other Libra. There may be overarching traits, but we're all individual, we're all different. And I'm just touching the surface, I'm just telling you a few little things that are in your chart, but there's a multitude of things that make up the sum. Just like you as an individual have a multitude of things about you that make it the sum of you. You're still with me. Jessica says, I've heard this is similar to Pisces rising. Exactly, I'm going to talk about Pisces rising and ascending as well, because that also has an influence as well. Hence why people, when they look at the horoscopes, they will look at their moon, sun, stars rising to see whether that has an influence. And some people have more of an influence that are not in their star sign, but they may have much more of an influence in their moon sign. But an astrologer would be best to tell you, because it would depend on whether, for example, if I had Jupiter also in my sign of Sagittarius, then I would be much more Sagittarius than another Sagittarius because I had the ruling planet of Sagittarius also in my chart. So it's scientific, guys. So let me just see what's happening on YouTube. I hope you're all still with me. Is it making sense? Good, good, good. I'm glad. So let's see if I haven't made your brains explode yet. So again, I'll just move on from there because I'm just showing how they move around. So this is important actually. So signs and constellations are not necessarily the same thing, sort of. And you need to see it like this, basically. This would probably explain it more. So basically, there are two types of astrology that govern over those sort of mini subjects that I talked about. So all those mundane and the electional, they sit under actually two different types of astrology. The astrology I'm talking about is called tropical, which is the Western version, but there is also another type that goes on the actual constellations in the sky. Why is that? It's because basically when astrology was first formed, it was formed based on Aries being in a certain place, so the constellation of Aries being in a certain place, which then gave the star sign Aries. But then over time, as our planet has tilted on its axis and has rotated round at certain degrees, they've actually come out of alignment, basically. And because they've come out of alignment slightly, it's formed two different types of astrology. Most people do the tropical astrology, and basically the alignment of what happens with the star sign that was based originally on the constellations, they won't be aligned for about the next 26,000 years. So it doesn't make either or astrology right or wrong, but just so you know, again, for purposes if you're getting astrology reading, you may want to answer which type of astrology that person does as well. But this is the most popular one. So I'm going to just come off the screen, but you'll still hear my voice, so I can explain this part. So sometimes as well, guys, you will see that different times of the year, the sun is in different places on the planets, different places in the sky, I should say. So sometimes when you look, the sun is higher in the sky, and sometimes it's lower in the sky. And then you also have longer days and you have shorter days. And basically these are called tropic turning points, which most of you would have heard about, which is like the winter solstice, the summer solstice, or the spring or equinox, or the autumnal equinox. And it's basically based on the axis of where the Earth is. So for example, when we are in the summer solstice, the Earth is actually tilted on its axis further away from the sun, hence why we get more daylight. But in the winter solstice, it is tilted much more closer to the sun and we get darker days. Whereas in the spring and autumnal equinox, it's perpendicular, which means it is neither too near or too far. And you need to reverse. So I'm going to be talking about the northern hemisphere in terms of when. So the winter solstice is in December, the summer solstice is in June, which is in Cancer, and the winter one it's in Capricorn. And in spring it is March, and autumn is in September, so in Libra. But you need to reverse that if you're in the southern hemisphere as well. Now, so why is this all important for you to know? I forgot to say also that splitting off is called the precession of the equinoxes. That's what it's been called. It's what it's been called. And as you can see here in this picture, that's the Earth at this moment in time tilted away from the sun, which would mean you're in a winter solstice type of year. Basically all of this has relevance to when somebody does your chart, the energy and the influences that are happening again at the time. So again, it's like multi-layered. So you've got your sign, you've got the planets, you've got the houses, but you've also got the equinoxes added on to your chart, which again create another layer of influence on what your personal astrology chart will mean for you. So the tropical astrology, the Western, is based on the solar year, which is 365 days, with Aries being the beginning of the spring equinox or the vernal equinox. Whereas the sidereal astrology, which is the other branch now of astrology, is based on the sidereal year, the constellation year, basically, which is just slightly over a year. But because it's just slightly over the year, it's became out of sync, and like I said, it would take about 26,000 years, and that is based on Aries and the sun being in Aries in the constellation of Aries at a different time to when it is in the tropical. So now we're going to look at houses. So houses are based on an Earth day, whereas the star signs are based on an Earth year's orbit as well. I'm going to just come back so you can see me, guys, again. Hello. So again, when astrology is done and how charts are done, it comes back again to our observation of the planets and those energies in correlation. So for a long time as well, we all thought the world was flat. And from our perspective, as we stand on the horizon, it does look like that. We look out, everything looks flat, and we look up in the sky, and the moon comes around and down, or sometimes the sun rises up, or it goes down like this, and sometimes the moon is big, and sometimes it's not, and the sun's up high. It's because of our observation, and again, the tilting of the axes. So for example, we have, I could be looking now on this horizon, looking at the moon as it goes over, and that's how it would look from my observation. It could also be, depending on where I am in the world or where the Earth is tilted on its axis, that the moon actually may appear to come upwards as well. After watching this, you'll be watching the skies a lot more closely just to see how they move around, particularly in different times of the year, different equinoxes or solstices as well. Again, this all has an influence on your chart. It brings layers. So the houses, basically, when you look at the wheel that I showed you earlier, are based on the horizon, and then this imaginary meridian line that goes down the middle, as you can see here. Okay, and then you have the ascendant, which, look at the ascendant as things rising. That's where you get your rising sign. And then as it goes through the day, it then descends down based on a horizon. Okay, so that's how astrologers get the rising sign, based on our observation from a horizon as the star signs and the planets ascend up and over and ascend down. Are you still with me? Again, if you don't get it, watch it twice, because it is Astrology 101. So as you can see here, the signs rise and set throughout the day, and if there are no planets in those signs, then they rise and fall too. So again, when you're born, or even today, you can look at what is ascending, what is descending, what planets are hanging out there, and what constellation, or star sign I should say, that we are in, and how those energies influence your day, influence your week, your month, so on and so forth. But then also, like I said, you're sitting in houses. So there's 12 different types of houses, and as they are all rotating, ascending and descending throughout the day, again, there are certain things that are going to influence you. So just so that I can tell you the types of houses really quickly, that are the 12, you have spiritual, you have business, you have partnerships, health, creativity, home, networking, finance, personal life, your spiritual life, community, career. Those are all the things that are in your houses. So it's a beautiful but complex science, which is why astrologers, I should say, should get a big pat on the back, because it is quite mathematical in its, mathematical but quite spiritual by nature, in order for you to track or predict what is likely to be for you, to help you to navigate, to help you to use those energies to your advantage, or to prepare when maybe it's going to be a bit of a bumpy ride. Now, this is where your location, this is why when you have your own astrology chart, it's super important that you give your location, because your location will determine also what star sign is rising for you, because your horizon will be different from somebody else that is in a different. So in this example here, this person lives much further up in the northern hemisphere, which means their horizon is going to be very different, their viewpoint is going to be very different from somebody else who lives somewhere else, which then means that their rising sign, in this example, it is, I believe that is, I can't see, it's so tiny, I think that's Aquarius. That would be Aquarius rising for this individual, and their star sign would be something different. And very similarly, if they perhaps lived here in the world, the location and the time and their ascending sign would be different. I think that's a Taurus down there. So that person's one is a Taurus. So your location, as well as your date and your time of birth, because remember, the houses move throughout the day, hence why they need your time of birth. The date of birth will help get to your star sign, and your location gets your rising, your ascending sign, which all influence parts of you, parts of the energies that you have to work with while you're in your human aspect. Again, even in India, Dominique, depends on what part, what date and what time. You'll have your own very individual set of signs for you to be working with. And again, depending on the combination, you may have some that are much more stronger than others, which you may be focusing on. Hence why some people, when they see their horoscopes on YouTube or anywhere else, they may go to more than one, because they've actually had their astrology natal chart done and they know the combination and influences that are in their personal chart. So some common questions that people get is, can you really have the same personality as 12 other, as 1/12 of the population? Well, obviously, hopefully I've explained that that's a no. So again, if you didn't get it the first time, your sun sign could be, in this example, it's in Sagittarius, because that's when you were born, but depending on your date of your born, the time you were born, the location of where you were born, also you will have different influences. So you might have these planets hanging out in your chart, and one of them will be your ascending sign because of your location. So actually you're not just a Sagittarius, you're a Sagittarius with different elements, but also sitting in different houses. So I believe that that house there, for example, is the spiritual house. So Sagittarius in the spiritual house with a moon rising in Aquarius would make you a different type of Sagittarius, a different set of influences, different set of priorities, different set of goals, different set of urges than another Sagittarius. And again, that's why people say, well, my sign doesn't fit me, because actually horoscopes in their general nature, hence particularly the ones you read in papers, are just that. They're supposed to be absolutely generic because they're supposed to do the archetype of what's happening for people. Hence why not all of those traits will fit you. You may find actually that you may be born as a Leo, but you've got much, much more water in you than you do fire, which will make you a very different type of Leo than the archetypal type of Leo as well. So other common questions: can I really have the same personality? Oh, have I gone backwards? Is that just repeat? That's repeated itself. The other question is, can my sign really predict my personality? Well, I think to a degree, yes. It will tell you the influences that are coming up. It won't be the whole definition of your personality, because the other influences is that if we go back to that kind of a whole macro, so what happens with the energy that I give off, our interactions with people will also have an influence on your personality. So you've got to see life like a combination of all sorts of things. Let me just come back on. It's like all sorts of different things that influence us, basically. So it can predict to a degree the influences, but remember, in your human aspect, you can set your intentions and you have free will, and that astrology and that your chart is about preparing you to strengthen you in what is before, in terms of the energies that may be not so good or may be wonderful, but how you can be prepared for that or work with that for you at a personal level. So for example, somebody who is Aries but has a lot of Taurus in the chart will be very different from an Aries who has maybe Taurus in the chart. I've got the other way around, but you get what I mean. Your chart basically is not there to limit you, not at all. It is not there at all to limit you. It is there to give you choices. It is there so that you can look at what is before you, hence why locational astrology is there, because you might decide that actually you want to have a change of location because the influences are better for you in your own intention settings than perhaps where you are now, and that includes with love and everything. Sometimes people will move houses because the energy or the location of that place is not good for their star sign, and actually by this shifting, making that one shift, will change their entire world in line with their intentions. And if you don't do it astrology, remember you've got your own spirit guides working with you to push and to nudge and to guide, to help you to get there yourself. Hence why, whether you're an astrologer, whether you're a tarot reader, or whether you're like me, psychic that works with the spirit guides, it's about reading energy. The energy that is all around us in a big, beautiful way, and in a very small, macro way. Well, guys, that was my introduction to Astrology 101. I think that's enough. Don't want to make your heads explode. But again, it's something that if you're interested in, you can get a natal chart from somebody who does astrology in that kind of way. Or it might be something that's inspiring you to think, gosh, I want to learn more about this myself. Because anyone can learn, can't they? So, I hope that that's been helpful, guys. You've all been amazing to stick through this. And again, if it hurt your head, watch it again. Hopefully you'll understand it a second time round, because it's epic stuff. It's epic stuff. So, and Natasha Kelly points out, yes, that the degrees, absolutely, the degrees influence the charts. There's so many different things. There are so many different things that influence the chart. And I couldn't cover them all because it really is deep stuff, but you need to see it like an onion. It's multi-layered. So actually, it's a beautiful thing about what makes us all individual. We might have this overarching thing, but actually the energies that support us are very individual, that we have chosen to come into, to be the person that we are. So I do hope that's helped, guys. Sorry about this being the second take, and thanks for coming and sticking with me. I'm always extremely grateful for all the support that I've had with my lives and also with my my own sort of monthly horoscopes. I thank everybody for your beautiful comments and your support. So thank you from me and my guides as well, for all the support you give. So I will be back next week with another subject. If you're interested, you can join my Facebook page. So if you're watching on YouTube, you can join me there, where you can make suggestions or just leave a comment on a subject you'd like me to cover in one of my next lives as well. And if you'd like to know more about me and my services, like to have a private reading, then you can just visit bellethesecretpsychic.com to learn more about me and my services as well. So you all have an amazing rest of the day, and I'll see you all next week. Take care. Bye.